if you have a sick child in the house or a sick parent in the house or a partner, that has a huge effect on not just their lifestyle, but the lifestyle of the entire family unit, right? So, and if they are suffering and they are struggling and they're not able to go to work to provide the best solution for the family, what you sometimes find is the partner can't go to work either because they have to stay and care for the sick, the sick family member. So the entire household suffers. And then what happens is that actually means that they then need to be on welfare or to be getting, solutions from the government to help them live an existence, as you rightly pointed out. And whilst the leaders, I'll keep calling them the leaders rather than government, have this fear of medical cannabis and exploring it as an option, they're spending more money on things that they don't need to be spending money on, rather than actually making people more healthy. So.
Okay, go. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Harmonia Podcast. We are joined here today by the lovely Stuart Marsh, who is the Chief Growth Officer of Cannim. Cannim, yeah. Hi, Stuart.
That's right. Yeah, Cannim, Chief Growth Officer. That's the one. That's me. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. How have you been?
Well, it's just after Christmas and New Year. I'm based down here in Sydney, so it's still hot here. We're in the middle of our summer holidays, so enjoying time at the beach and very heavy rain. So it's just you get tropical storms a lot, right? It's hot all day, builds up, get a nice cool storm in the evening.
So I would feel really bad about the storms had you not said how hot it is over there. So now I don't feel bad at all, like at all. Like, do you know how cold it is over here?
Yeah, you had snow over the Christmas break, didn't you?
It was ridiculous. At one point, I was genuinely waiting for White Walkers to pop out. I just thought, what kind of cold is this? Like, it was horrible. Um,
Well, I am English originally, so I know exactly how bad the weather is at this time of year. So that's one of the reasons that 20 years ago I moved to Australia.
oh God, you know what? I'd move there if it wasn't for those ridiculous spiders.
I'll see if I can find one for you. I live in the middle of the city.
No, 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 no. Mm-mm.
You're far more likely to get killed by a car than you are a wild animal in Australia, right?
Ooh, I can't do them. You know what? I've seen all the videos online. Yeah, no, no, I don't believe this. I saw a kangaroo try and beat somebody up once, like so. um,
Yeah, they do that. Yeah, yeah. And you got to watch out for the koala bears as well. They're vicious.
you know, I'm just not going. It's okay. I'm too scared. Yeah, sorry. So I go on a bit of a tangent, right? So let's bring us back. So Stuart is here to actually talk about using medications holistically. But before we can actually go into that, I actually just want to hand over to Stuart so that he can do a more formal introduction. Stuart, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Appreciate that. As you rightly said, and it says on the screen, my name is Stuart Marsh. I am the Chief Growth Officer for Cannim. And I guess what that means practically is that my job is to identify new markets for medical cannabis, where medical cannabis is becoming an opportunity for patients, and really use our skills and experience as an organization to kind of help that come to fruition. So we are experts in medical cannabis. We only do medical cannabis. We don't get involved in recreational. So we focus currently in Australia and the UK. We've also been involved in Germany, but as you may or may not know, there's a lot of red tape. They like bureaucracy, the Germans, so it's not necessarily an easy place to do business. But yeah, we source product from around the world, high quality, full spectrum product. That's going to be the best opportunity for people to really get good healing. And we basically work through the plethora of crazy requirements to get it into countries and then get it sold. So we educate doctors, we educate pharmacists, the whole kind of healthcare system and where we can, and we can't actually say very much, we try and communicate with the people that need it the most to let them know, A, that it's available, B, that it's legal, C, that it's not harmful, and D, this is how you can kind of go about getting it. And I think you'll find, so down here in Australia, there's about roughly 600,000 people with prescriptions for medical cannabis. In the UK, there's somewhere around 50,000, despite being a country twice the size, although with significantly less deadly spiders, as you rightly pointed out. And so, considering that they both legalized at about the same time, it's interesting that Australia's run with it and kind of really got quite so far ahead. And the UK, I think, is really only now beginning to get some real traction and beginning to, I guess, show people how they can be helped with medical cannabis. Up until now, there's been so much stigma still. Even the media has been, I think, continuing to push the agenda of stigma that we've seen for the last 100 years. But people have wonderful stories to tell of healing and help. And, your podcast is a great example of that, right? And when we encourage people to open up and tell their stories, then what you find is that other people identify with that and go, wow, that's what I'm going through. That's the fear that I had. Maybe I could have that positive outcome that person's talking about. So, the more that we can help people, I understand that, this is an opportunity not to be feared. Then I think, better we can be as a healthy nation. Probably the best way. I'd also point out it's 10:15 at night here, so if every now and then I have to think for my words, that's why.
No. Everything was understood loud and clear. Thank you so much. And yeah, for doing this podcast at 10:15 also.
All good. I'm a night person. If it was in the morning, I would be even struggling more.
Oh, good point. Good point. I'm not a morning person either. My brain doesn't come alive till about noon. Um, but you said something quite interesting around identifying new markets. Have you noticed any trends, I suppose, in the UK when it comes to a particular group of patients that are more interested, I suppose, in cannabis-based medications?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. What you tend to find, and I've had this conversation with a few people, I've got a marketing background. I spent 25 years making people feel good about the booze that they drank, including I worked on Stella Artois in the UK, for example. Marketing speak is always about demographics, right? Who's your target? What demographic are they? What age are they? What do they think and feel and do? And I don't think you can, with medical cannabis, my observation so far is that demographics don't work. It's need. Because if you have an epileptic child and you've heard that this might help, you will move heaven and earth to get the right medication that's going to help them. And that's why medical cannabis is available around the world. We owe a great debt of gratitude to the mothers and fathers of those children who risked prison and ridicule and everything else to demonstrate that this could really help. But that's the same. I've got people that come to us and say, my knee's shot. I can't walk my child to school anymore because my knee is screwed, and that's distressing me. I need to find solutions. I've tried all these medications that doctors have been prescribing for me, and they just don't work, or they have side effects that I just don't like. What you find is that people get to medical cannabis through quite a desperate need because of, as I said, it's been around. This thing's been prohibited for 100 years. Up until then, it had been used for thousands of years to treat people. And what you find is that nobody has ever died from a cannabis overdose. And you clearly can't say that about opioids, which doctors dish out, left, right, and center. So I think what you find is desperate people who are open-minded and prepared to do their own research and not just sit and suffer on their own. People that go, there must be a better option, and I'm gonna bloody well find it and go out and do it. And you look at somewhere like the UK where you have a health system that financially looks after people. There might be all sorts of problems with the NHS, and I won't go into any politics around that because I haven't been there for 20 years. I don't know it. But at the end of the day, Brits are used to having their medication paid for by the government, right? It's what you pay your taxes for, and that's what you get back. Whereas you look at someone like Australia, and yes, we sort of have that system. We don't have an American system where you have to pay for everything. That's clearly messed up. But you do have to contribute towards medication. So yeah. So this is a drug that you have to in the UK you have to go to a clinic and pay a doctor a fee to have a consult with them, and then you have to pay for your medicine. So it's not cheap and it's not accessible to everybody. So if you are someone that actually there's plenty of people who can't afford it that just have to have it, and so they sacrifice other options in order to have it. So how do you change that? How do you get it into government systems? Unfortunately, the answer to that question is that it's a very, very slow process. And when we'll start talking a bit more about the holistic side of it here, they used to, the last 150 years of drugs have been big pharma taking one small tiny bit of a plant or whatever it might be and replicating it and doing it over and over again, proving that does a specific effect in a 20-year study. Sorry, picture just fell over in the breeze. Just check that it wasn't a giant spider, Berta. It's okay, it wasn't. So they proved that it was.
I'm more worried about Casper being in your house.
It's more likely to be the dogs. So anyway, and they, and it gets registered. And cannabis is very hard to do that. We've only just been allowed to do research on it, which we're now undertaking. But the traditional method for proving that drugs work don't necessarily work where you have a plant and you're using all of the plant rather than one small tiny part of it. And I think that's a change in mindset that the leaders of countries, and when I say leaders, I don't just mean the people who are in power, it's the people that advise the people in power, the experts around them. We need to start thinking differently about what medicine is. And one of the things I talk about a lot is I think that we are about to go into an era of the re-emergence of plant-based medicines. So, traditional Chinese medicine, for example, is something that works for a very large number of people, but is kind of ridiculed by by modern Western medicine, because it looks like it's a bit of a quack kind of thing, right? Ayurvedic medicine. We've got the psilocybin coming back onto the scene, which is having an incredible effect for so many people struggling with severe PTSD from horrible experiences and the like. And we have kind of medical cannabis leading the charge as the thing that seems to be opening the door for a lot of these medicines. So people are learning, they're understanding, they're beginning to understand what the entourage effect is and the synergistic effect, and appreciating that, one size doesn't fit all, and that there are different options, and you have to try and find the thing that works the best for you.
Thank you. And you mentioned a good few stuff here that I actually took a few notes in. But I think, to be honest with you, I think the main thing that I actually just want to touch on is that I think, like everybody else, I too used medical cannabis as a last resort medication because I was juggling so many different other prescriptions and it did nothing. And I thought I can't live like this. And I think you mentioned something which I thought was really interesting, is that it takes the right sort of attitude as well. I think it takes the attitude of somebody who is also just fed up and can no longer tolerate that form of existence, because I don't even call that a life. That's just an existence. Which is sad, because I feel like people shouldn't have to get to that point. If it's something that it was offered at the very onset, then we wouldn't necessarily have a lot of people whose mental health has completely deteriorated due to not having any options to actually treat themselves.
And it's not just yourself, right? In that scenario, sorry to kind of build on. Let me just build on what you were saying. one of the things that I've noticed is that if you have a sick child in the house or a sick parent in the house or a partner, that has a huge effect on not just their lifestyle, but the lifestyle of the entire family unit, right? So, and if they are suffering and they are struggling and they're not able to go to work to provide the best solution for the family, what you sometimes find is the partner can't go to work either because they have to stay and care for the sick family member. So the entire household suffers. And then what happens is that actually means that they then need to be on welfare or to be getting, solutions from the government to help them live an existence, as you rightly pointed out. And whilst the leaders, I'll keep calling them the leaders rather than government, have this fear of medical cannabis and exploring it as an option, they're spending more money on things that they don't need to be spending money on, rather than actually making people more healthy. So I can give you an example of this. So we're in a TV show called High Science, which is available on YouTube. High Science TV is the flagrant plug for it. It's an American TV show by the producers of Death Row, Deadliest Catch, shows like that, Ice Road Truckers, shows like that. It's based mostly in the States, but we're the only international company in it. Anyway, for that show, I interviewed a guy in Jersey who was he would have been an older gentleman. I think he would have been late 60s, probably something like that. And he was having severe seizures constantly. And he basically had to get an ambulance to the hospital every quarter, right? Every 3 months, he had to ambulance, medications, hospital bed, the whole shebang. He started taking medical cannabis and he goes to the hospital once a year. And I spoke to his doctor, interviewed his doctor, and I said to him, how much do you think Gary has saved the NHS by getting his own medication, by going on medical cannabis? And the doctor reckoned that if you added up all of those hospital visits, the ambulances, all of that time, the drugs, he reckoned it would save the NHS £15,000 per person if you let them take medical cannabis. So, and
is that fully funded by the NHS?
It's not currently, but that should form part of the argument.
Sorry, I'm the one who asked the question wrong. So when you're saving the £15,000 per person, does that include the cost of the medication of the cannabis?
No, it didn't. So you're right. So if the NHS was paying for the medication and the prescribing, it would probably cost something like £2,000 a year instead of the £15,000 that it's costing. And let alone the fact that he was a great example. His wife couldn't work. They struggled to get their son to school. Because they had this, the line that you use, they were existing. So that if you go past even just the medical cost and you look at the societal cost, then I think what you find is that, there's a very strong case to be made that medical cannabis can have a very significant effect on people in a positive way, obviously.
Yeah, no, because it's interesting that you say that because 2K per person, that's already a lot of savings. When you're looking at, I think they said the waiting list is about 7 million people on the waiting list for a specialist intervention. So if you're looking at that and each and every single person saving 2K to get treatment that's effective, I think it's already a miracle worker in itself because sadly, a lot of people are on that waiting list to get medication or to get treatment that's only going to make them feel mildly comfortable enough to just about exist. So that already makes a world of difference. But it's kind of interesting that you mentioned as well, people having to make sacrifices in their lives. And that's the one that I tend to find that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to a chronic illness. I think a lot of people often think that, for starters, because they don't see anything wrong with you, they immediately assume that you don't struggle to do things. I hope that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, good. Like, and I always like to give people the example of doing a mundane task like brushing our teeth. People don't realize that that takes a lot of our energy. I mean, for starters, I'm always bleeding because of the arthritis, you know. So no matter how you're always bleeding brushing your teeth. Second of all, again, arthritis hands. So this movement, this stuff, yeah, hurts a lot. Like, so people don't realize just the littlest of tasks takes so much of our energy, and as a result, you can't keep up with the upkeep of just taking care of yourself, and so it has a ripple effect on the rest of your life, and you lose everything, and I mean absolutely everything. And I think a part of, and I guess this is where we're going to jump into holistic care now, because a huge part of trying to regain a sense of not just yourself, but your well-being is by actually start looking at a holistic healthcare approach. And because it's not just your health that's impacted, it's your whole world, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. And I think, one of the things for me, when I started my medical cannabis journey, like working for this company about 5.5 years ago, probably 6 when I first got introduced. And I'd never even taken cannabis in my life, right? I wasn't even like Bill Clinton, where I didn't even inhale at college, right? I just never, it wasn't something that I was that interested in. I'd worked in the booze industry and blah, 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 blah. So I got into it a little bit naively, and then really dived into the medical side. And I guess once I started finding out from people, you hear people's stories about the positive effect that it has on them. The thing that really opened my eyes was, I'd been closed to this possibility. People talk about all these other forms of holistic wellness that have a positive impact on them. And I think if it's something that helps, then we should embrace it and let people try it. Like, why is that difficult or hard? So there's a lady that I know from the dog park down the road who she teaches meditation, and I think what you find is that if you can pair something like meditation with taking your medication, particularly medical cannabis, if that means that it helps you focus on you and your wellness and what you need to do, if that helps you, brilliant. We should be encouraging that, and you should go out and do it. It doesn't necessarily help everybody, but that's okay. If it helps the majority of people and it helps even a small bit, then I think it's something that we should encourage and embrace. And the traditional model for healthcare, when people have to pay for it, is churn and burn, right? So you come into the clinic, our doctor has a quick conversation with you, they write you a prescription, and off you go, and they take it to the next person. And specialists don't really tend to do follow-ups, do they? They don't need to. They've done their job, and away you go. So I think it's really important that you find a way to enable people to add these other tools to their toolkit that's going to allow them to be better and heal faster. So, I talked about meditation, and the lady that I talked about, she has a whole load of online tools that help people go through guided meditations. Sleep is often a big one. And of course, we get so much restoration to our bodies and minds through sleep. So, she also talks about having a number of tools. Meditation helps you relax, calm down, blah, blah, blah. And so, you add the two together and it's going to help. So what we are doing, and our clinic in the UK, which is the Lumiere Clinic in the UK, they call it the Lumiere Life Effects, right? So you come to us. We don't want to just go, right, here's your medical cannabis, off you go. We want to make sure that we're giving you a toolkit that means that you're going to have a better experience all round. And, why would you do that? Because if people come to us and find out that, they generally have better effects than some of the churn and burn clinics, then people will tell other people and more people will come. I mean, it's, we're a business at the end of the day. Yes, we are about getting people well. But our focus is, our belief is that we can do well by doing good. And what I mean by that is if you actually genuinely focus on helping people, and that is at your core, and that's what you try and do, then it's a bit like the rating system for everything from Uber and Airbnb through to everything that exists these days. If you're doing the right thing by people, people will support you and you will do well. So for me, it's about making sure that we listen to people, we hear their needs. Yes, we give them a foundation of medical cannabis, but we also go, hey, you know what, you should try this or try that, or here's some extra tools to help you just have a much better journey and feel better all around.
And and I'm so happy. Oh, yeah, thank you. And I'm so happy to hear you say that, because I know that one of the things I always complain about in the industry is that we are becoming, I call it overprescribing, where you go into the doctor and it's like, oh, you're sick, here you go. Oh, you're still sick, here's another medication. Oh, you're having effects from that medication, here's another medication. And you just get a person on 9 different prescriptions and the medication does nothing. So what was the point of putting all that poison, what I call poison, into your body when it's not even effective? That's I suppose the one issue that I have. But it's not only just that, like as healthcare professionals, the very first thing that you learn is a holistic healthcare approach. Before you even put anyone on any kind of medication, you would actually look at their diet, their sleep. Their sleep is a huge one, because like you mentioned, sleep is restorative, and it doesn't just restore the body, it restores the mind. People who struggle to sleep will struggle with their mental health a lot more than somebody who isn't, basically. So I mean, we can go into all the different factors, but the most important part is that used to be healthcare. Healthcare used to be where we look at all of these other elements, because we recognize that medication is just one element, and medication is also something that is used as a tool to guide you through a holistic healthcare approach. So for example, I'm currently bragging to everybody that I'm off my walking stick, so I'm on a high with that right now. And but one of the reasons why I can't just sit here and say, oh yeah, medical cannabis, yeah, it was great, but it was a great tool to help me get out of bed so that I can finally go and do the physiotherapy that I needed, so that I can start feeling a lot better. And the mistake that a lot of people always make is that when they start to finally feel better, they don't realize that that's just step A. Step B is, let's implement a holistic approach, and what you'll notice is you're going to feel so much better than you can actually realize. Like, people don't actually understand that you can feel so much better. And I think the second part of that is, not only do you feel so much better, but you can also... Oh God, sorry, I didn't get any sleep last night, so now I'm super exhausted trying to figure out what I'm trying to say over here. Oh yeah, sorry, you can have a long-lasting effect. And it's about improving your health then at the same time, because when you start improving your health, then you need less medication, then you're saving money on medication. I mean, it just has such a huge ripple effect on your well-being and your overall quality of life. And I'll stop ranting now, sorry.
No, and I think building on that as well, I think one of the things I said earlier was, when you think about the sorts of people that come to medical cannabis, they've been quite proactive to find it. And I think a lot of what you described just then is there's a lot of people who are just passive about their wellness. And, I'll go to the doctor, they will give me a tablet and it will cure me. And I don't have to do anything. I just sit back and relax and let it kind of wash over me and happen. And when that doesn't happen, they, as you rightly said, they go and get more and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I think what you find with people who enter medical cannabis is that they tend to be more proactive. They've had enough. They want solutions. They're desperate for help and support. And so they do the research. They talk to people and find out the right solution, and they go and they make something happen for themselves. And they're probably the sorts of people that are going to make it sticky, because they are taking responsibility for their own health and driving it forward. And they're more likely to be aware of the fact that, yes, taking your medication helps, but I have to do my physiotherapy. I have to do it. Or I have to journal before I go to bed to get all these thoughts out of my head so that I can have a calm sleep. And be disciplined about doing it. Listen to the experts that tell you, you know what, these little things, you know, if you're a professional sports team, a 1% improvement is enormous. It's the difference between winning a gold medal and coming 10th or something, right? So you take that approach into your life. Go get those little 1% improvements every week, not even every day. But if you feel 1% better this week than you did last week, and then you carry on doing the work that you need to do to feel 1% better again, can't do maths very well, but ultimately you're going to end up in a much better place. And it's not hard to do small bits, you know, make them habits and go. So, you know, I applaud you for that. You know, you've clearly put a lot of hard work and effort in making yourself, you know, break free from the trap that you were in and find the right solutions that work for you to you know, come out the other side.
Yeah, and I think you said like two very important things for me anyways, and that is, yes, it's important to be proactive and find what works for yourself. And I think that's the hardest part, right? So I tend to find the actual opposite of what you mentioned. I tend to find, because patients are so proactive, because they've had to come to medical cannabis as a very last resort, they're exhausted. So by the time they get here, they start acting like every other patient, which is just like, well, now that I found something that works, why put any more effort into it? Because you can feel better. That's that you know.
Yeah, and I think that's where, you know, having a clinic like ours who will just encourage you to do other things as well. And, you know, I mean, people have to check back in with the clinic. You know, let's just make sure we're continuing to kind of do that. I think that's important. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, and I don't know whether you talk about this a lot, but I've had a few people come through the clinic in Australia, people that I know, who try something and go, yeah, it didn't work, and I've stopped. And one of the things, if people are listening and they're thinking about, oh, maybe I'll give this a go, or they're listening and they go, well, I tried it once, didn't work out, so I stopped. The complicated thing about medical cannabis is that it's thousands of different plants. And at the moment, we only understand really THC and CBD, indica and sativa. We haven't dived deeply into how, you know, the entourage effect, the magic of all the terpenes and minor cannabinoids and the flavonoids and the like work together to help you. So if you've gone out and you've tried a particular flower and it hasn't worked for you, it's worth trying a different one and maybe another different one if that one doesn't work before you go, actually, this isn't really working. Because what you might find is it's not that medical cannabis doesn't work for you, it's just that one that you took didn't work for you. It's like going into the bottle shop, buying a bottle of Riesling and going, oh, I don't like wine. Well, actually, you might. You just picked the wrong type of wine. Maybe you're a Shiraz person over here and you should try that. So I would just encourage people to think in that kind of mindset if they're beginning the journey or they've begun it and given up. So
and it's quite interesting that you say that, because when you think about it from let's say you're going to your healthcare provider, your GP, if they were to start me on pregabalin, they would start me on the lower dose, and usually lower dose does absolutely nothing for me. And then they would have to increase the dose and then increase it until you find the optimum dose. So there's no difference here. Sometimes you just need to find the right dose or the right strain, because even though certain medication, I have a certain dose, but then I can try another strain of medication and find that even at a higher dose, it does absolutely nothing, which I was actually really shocked by, because I did not realize. I just assumed, like other people, that every plant would work. It's a plant, right? It will work, because it seems to be the only thing that works. Full stop. Yeah. And then I tried one, and I thought this did nothing. Like nothing. I was like, I might as well just have drank water. It had the same effect, which I was really surprised by. So I thought, oh, okay, interesting. I guess they don't all work. So yeah, guys, that happens.
yeah, absolutely, it does. Absolutely, you know, and So it's an important thing. There's so much within medical cannabis that I think it's really important to talk about, so that people understand how to go about the experience and to give it a go. So that you give yourself the best shot, basically. So yeah, thank you for indulging that conversation, because I think it's a useful one for people, especially as you rightly say, the UK is obviously quite a young entrant to medical cannabis. So it's not like you're going to walk down the street or your friends are on it or what have you. You're probably more likely to be in a minority rather than a majority. And so to find people that really know what they're talking about is probably a bit rarer. So, and that comes to another issue, if you don't mind me just talking about this. I know in Australia, it's worse than it is in the UK, but the regulations around what medical cannabis companies can and can't say are so tight that we're not allowed to talk about. Like in Australia, we can't tell people that we are a cannabis company. Our website can't have the word cannabis on it. If we try and advertise on Google or Facebook and you use the word cannabis, shut down. Can't do it. So how then do you give people information so that when they on their own discover that actually medical cannabis is something that they want to do, and they try and find resources to help them do it safely, in the right way, in the most cost-effective way, in a way that's going to optimize it for them, they can't find us because we can't communicate with them. So it's a real challenge to get that balance right between, we're not just, from a government point of view, hey, we're not just trying to push cannabis onto people. We're trying to give people resources to optimize their wellness and to help them. And I think that's a balance that I know Australia doesn't have right at the moment. And I suspect the UK will struggle with as well. And that's where resources like your podcast are fundamentally important. And, there's podcasts there where people will talk about these issues so you can learn more about it. And Reddit seems to be the place where, you can go and find out what strains are available and what people have found those strains helpful. So one of the things that we're doing to build on that is we have a research project that we're about to start on called the Lumiere Mission, where we are going to do a large-scale study of people so that we can gather that kind of information. So, people like yourself, I am a person that, I have these problems, I'm this type of person, I live here, this is my background, this is what I find generally works for me for this condition. And let's allow people to find that information so that they can go, oh, I'm like Berta, I've had that condition as well. Maybe I'll try what she tried because it worked for her and was helpful. So, I think that's fundamentally important. So that's why we're doing that research.
Right. That sounds amazing. The more research that we can do, the better. I always complain about the fact that the government is just not putting enough funding into medical cannabis research. And I get it. We are, in the grand scheme of healthcare, we are a little speck. Let's be honest, we are a little speck when it comes to the grand scheme of healthcare. We'd like to be more than a speck, and I think this is the stuff that we are working towards right now. But ultimately, the reality is we are a little speck, and whilst we are in that position, nothing much is getting done. So sadly, it just means that organizations like myself, yourself, are putting in extra work towards actually trying to achieve these goals. But I suppose to round it off then, that will bring us to the last two questions I would like to ask people. So what would your advice then be to cannabis naive patients that are looking to explore a prescription but very hesitant, mainly due to the stigma?
I guess my advice would be, see if you can seek out people who have patients currently or have tried it, and when you do, see if you can find out what the negativities that they had were. And what I think you'll find is that maybe they got to a point where it didn't work for them, but there was certainly no harm done. There was certainly no nasty side effects. The worst that's probably going to happen is it might not be as effective as you want it to be. It could be significantly more, and research studies generally show that people have a really positive, powerful effect across a whole host of conditions. So go online, ask around. Facebook and Instagram are tools where you will find people who will talk about their journeys, and give yourself, I guess, the confidence that it's going to be okay to give it a go. Right? You don't have anything to fear. No one has ever died here. And it's not like opioids where you can get addicted, physically addicted. It's not going to happen. So we're armed with that. You then need to go out and find the right clinic for you. And what I mean by that is there's a number of you have to go to a clinic. We have to find an individual specialist, but clinics tend to be the best way to do it. And, I was having a conversation with someone the other day who, they were treated like a number. Let's use that, and people were just pushing their own product on them, and they didn't like that, and ultimately, and it kind of put them off the whole industry. And just know that not everyone in the industry is like that. If you come across someone like that, you do your research, find somebody else. There's plenty of others that can help you, and find someone who connects with you. It has the right kind of empathy that you are looking for, and the right kind of advice. And hopefully you will then have a wonderful journey and optimize your wellness from that point of view. So if anyone's got any questions or concerns or issues, I'm more than happy for people to reach out to me and my team, and we can give all sorts of examples, I guess, of people that you might find interesting that will help soothe your mind and allow yourself to kind of embrace the opportunity.
I mean, I do want to just touch on two things. The first thing is that you do have patients that experience adverse reactions. So like any medication, there is the odd people here and there that will experience an adverse reaction. If you do, don't worry about it. You follow the exact same protocol that you would if it were any other medication, and just go to A&E and they will treat you for that. And then fill out a MHRA form. It's a yellow card form. Information about it is on our website. And just with regards to dependence, yes, you do not really develop a physical dependence, but for some patients you can develop a psychological dependence. Again, the number is very low, but again, just for the patients, this message is more for those people that might be impacted by it, because I don't want them to sit there and be like, well, I was not expecting this. Even though it doesn't happen to a lot of people, it can happen to some people. So just for those people, don't be afraid. It does happen, and there is so much support that you can get if it does happen. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Oh my God, it's very low risk. It's very low risk. But I'm a healthcare professional. I got to mention the risk. But just there's the more interesting question now. What advice would you give to healthcare professionals in the UK in the cannabis space? Sorry.
Wow, that's a big question. It's not that dissimilar, I think, to the advice that I would give to people who are looking for it. I guess, there's a lot of medicine science changes, right? We used to think the world was flat. It's not. It's round. It's a big sphere floating in space. We go around the sun. The sun's moving, the whole thing, la, 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 la. But we didn't know that before. And there's things that we discover, and scientists pride themselves on being open-minded to seeing evidence and then changing their mind, right? So we might not yet have given the kind of evidence that some other drugs have done, because we haven't done 20-year RCTs on the product. But what you're finding with medical cannabis is you cannot fight the people power that is saying, oh my God, this is helping me, or I saw this help my neighbor and I want it. And if patients come to you looking for help with medical cannabis, don't make them feel bad about asking you. Don't belittle them and churn out that stigma rubbish that is so outdated, and educate yourself on the realities of the fact that, as you rightly pointed out, yes, some people have adverse reactions, but the vast majority find a wonderful change in their circumstances off the back. So, the responsibility of a doctor, and I've used this line in the TV show, they take a Hippocratic oath to do no harm, right? The doctor's first job, do no harm. If you actually ignore the opportunity of medical cannabis and instead prescribe something like an opioid, which is addictive and can kill people, you are not going by your Hippocratic oath to do no harm. You might think that you are, but because but you need to educate yourself that you're not. So I think it's really important that doctors, as much as anyone, embrace and listen and educate themselves, and are prepared to throw out what they thought they know and listen to the new reality of where we are and what's going on in the world. So, I think that's a hard thing to do. You've got very ingrained ways of working in the healthcare system, and this is it's a massive change. It's an era, once in an era kind of change, right? So embrace it, understand it before you reject it. And understand the fact that actually, you can help not just people, but their families and society as a whole by going, okay, let's see. It's not going to hurt. It's unlikely to hurt you. Let's give it a go and find out what's going to happen. So, and to add to that, in Australia, only about 5% of doctors are prescribing cannabis. So despite the fact that any GP can prescribe it, you're still only about 5% because there's so much to know, and it's not super complicated. But we talked about the fact that there's 1,000 strains. There's 1,000 strains available for sale in Australia, right? How do they know which one to prescribe and why? They just don't often. So what you often find here in Australia is a doctor is more likely to just say, I think it's an opportunity for you. I don't know enough about it, which is quite brave of them to say, I don't know. Go and talk to that clinic or that clinic or that clinic, and they will be able to help you. So I suspect it won't change very quickly, but the good doctors will say, I'm not sure, but I think it could help. Here's the people that can go and you should talk to because they're the experts. That was me.
And I think that is a perfect note to end it on. I like to always leave people with something to think about. Stuart, thank you so much for coming on the show here today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure. I love obviously talking about this industry and this crazy plant. So to find people that can help share experiences, as we talked about earlier, and find more ways to help people is always a pleasure. So thank you for what you're doing. Know that it's helping a lot of people. So well done, and keep up the good work.
All right. Thank you. And for anybody that is interested in any of the work that Stuart and his team are doing, all the links will be available in the description section of this video. And we look forward to seeing everybody next week. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.